Okay, people, welcome back to another reading session of the early history of man, Table of Nations. And this is part 5 of my videos. So this is the Shem family tree, should we say. See Shem at the top, number 48, and the descendants underneath him, who are Elam, Asshur, Arphaxad, Lud and Aram. From Aram you get Uz, Hul, Gether, Meshech. From Arphaxad you get Shelah, Eber, Peleg, Joktan. And from Peleg, Joktan you get Ru, Serug, Nahor, Terah, and Shelep, Jerah, Uzal, Obal, Sheba, Havilah, Almodad, Hazar Maveth, Hadorah, Diklah, Abimael, Ophir, Jobab. From Terah you get Abraham, Nahor, Haran. From Haran you get Lot, Moab, and Benami. And from Abraham you get Ishmael, Isaac, Zimran, Joktan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, Shua. From Jokshan you get Sheba, Dedan, Ashurim, Letushim, and Leumim. And from Midian you get Ephah, Henoch, Eldah. And from them you get Ephar and Abidah. And Ishmael, at 100 there, his descendants are Nebaioth, Kedar, Adbeel, Mibsam, Mishma, Duma, Massa, Hadad, Tema, Jetur, Naphish, Kedema. So guys, we're going to go through all those names in the lineage of Shem, which is quite big. Without further ado, we start number 48, Shem, the progenitor of all the Semitic races. The name Shem is rendered as Sumu in the Akkadian inscriptions. At the time of the scattering of the nations from Babel, the descendants of Japheth, C1, migrated to the north and northwest of Shinar, mainly towards Europe. They also migrated to the southeast towards the Indian subcontinent and thence to the Far East. The descendants of Shem and Ham, however, shared between them the southern and central regions of Asia Minor and Arabia, with Ham's descendants subsequently spreading into the African continent. This, of course, meant that a certain amount of intermingling took place between the posterities of Shem and Ham. It is consequently sometimes difficult to assess whether certain early nations were predominantly Semitic or Hamitic. Sometimes, for example, a people descended from Ham would adopt a Semitic language. Sometimes a Semitic people would adopt an Indo-European Japhetic tongue, and this has naturally led to some confusion over certain archaeological or documentary aspects of the evidence. It has also, sadly, allowed the charge to be rashly made that the Table of Nations is replete with alleged scribal errors and other types of mistake or fraud. A careful study of the following notices, however, should quell such fears. The confusion that currently reigns, though, is especially prevalent amongst the early Arab nations. For example, Sheba and Dedan, c. 22 and 23, are recorded in the genealogy as the grandsons of Cush, and were thus the progenitors of two Hamitic nations. Later in the genealogy, however, there are yet two other founders of Arab tribes named Sheba and Dedan, c. 95 and 96, both of whom being descended from Abraham through Jokshan, and thus of Semitic origin. There is also a third Sheba, c. 70, but he is extraneous to the point that we are now considering. They are recorded in all instances as a distinct and separate peoples. The problem, therefore, is deciding whether the later nations of Sheba and Dedan were so named after Semitic or Hamitic ancestors. The linguistic evidence is hardly decisive, as types of language were often adopted from outside the tribal or national sphere. Therefore, we are left with the chronological evidence which tells us in this particular instance that the tribes of Sheba and Dedan were originally of Hamitic descent, as the grandsons of Cush quite obviously lived several generations, 8 to be precise, earlier than the sons of Joktan. Thus, the later Semitic tribes of Sheba and Dedan were so named after the lands and Hamitic peoples amongst who they settled. Indeed, it is of special interest for us to note in this context that the Hebrew word for Arab, that is Rab, is derived from the same root as Ereb, meaning a mixed multitude. Furthermore, even today, the Semitic tribes of the Arabian Peninsula will speak disdainfully for their Hamitic neighbours as Musta Rabs or pretended Arabs. So in this picture, we have figure 8, an Elamite after a gold statuette, 1200 BC. The Elamites are referred to constantly by their erstwhile neighbours, Assyria and Babylonia. Got the unibrow going on there, star-studded apron, lamb. However, while such problems are by no means insuperable, we must be careful not to apply solutions that are too simplistic. National boundaries in these early times, if they existed at all, were notoriously elastic. Some peoples would merge with neighbouring tribes and nations, if only for the mutual protection that is afforded them in an often hostile world. The classic example being the merging of the peoples of Magog and Ashkenaz, say 3 and 6, to make up together the fierce and warlike Scythians people. At other times, they were maybe conquered and dispersed or assimilated within conquering tribes beyond any further recognition. Therefore, it is hardly surprising that some should be lost to us altogether, while certain others should be of an entirely mysterious provenance. For the most part, though, these various peoples are still traceable in the ancient records, their historical reality at least being thus firmly demonstrated, even if their precise areas of settlement should sometimes be too vague to be accurately assessed. 49. Elam, the founder of the Elamites, which people were known to the Babylonians as the Elamtu, to the Greeks as Elame, and whom the Romans knew as Elami. Elamites recorded their own name as the Haltamti. Subsequently, the Old Persian inscriptions rendered their name as Uju, and the Middle Persian inscriptions speak of Huz, which is simply the archaic form of the modern Persian name for Khuzestan, which now covers what used to be the land of Elam. See figure 8, see map 2. 50. Asshur, the founder of the nation to whom he gave his name, to wit, Assyria. It may be possible to identify Asshur in the early king list of Assyria as Puzur Ashur I. According to these lists, Puzur Ashur I would have lived and reigned 1960 BC, which accords rather well with the biblical chronology. Ashur was one of the earliest men to be identified and worshipped by his descendants. Indeed, as long as Assyria lasted, that is until 1612 BC, accounts of battles, exploits, diplomatic affairs, and foreign bulletins were daily read out to his image, and every Assyrian king held that he wore the crown only with the express permission of Ashur's divine ghost. On an even more fanciful level, in Jewish rabbinical literature, he is said to have been the only righteous man in the days of the building of Babel, moving away when he learned the sinful nature of the enterprise. But this is so unlikely, and is at such variance with the very nature of even his earliest descendants that it can be safely dismissed. See map 2. 51. Arphaxad. He was a progenitor of the Chaldeans, his name being equivalent to Arpchesed, that is, the boundary of Chaldea. That he was indeed the forebear of the Chaldeans is confirmed by the Hurrian Nuzi tablets, which render the name as Arap-Hara, the founder of Chaldea. The name was also known to the Akkadians as Arafu. Some scholars have endeavoured to treat his name as a derivative of the Assyrian phrase Arba Keshashtu, meaning the four corners of the world. But given the somewhat localized nature of the Chaldean people, confining themselves to the most part to southern Mesopotamia, This derivation is unlikely. The Assyrians knew his descendants as the Chaldu, adept astrologers, magicians, and mathematicians. Ptolemy, however, recorded name on their lands as Arphaxad, while it was known to others as Arphaxad, the very early settlements of the children of Arphaxad. However, appears to have been what is today 2.5 acre ruin that is still called Arpakia. It lies some 4 miles to the east of ancient Nineveh and is the remains of a very early farming community. Well, guys, you know what I think about the Chaldeans. I think they were the Chaldee. And maybe they weren't as localized as this paper suggests. 52. Lud. The early descendants of Lud, the Ludim, were known to both the Assyrians and the Babylonians as Ludu. Josephus tells us that the land was later known as Lydia, a direct Greek derivation of the name of Lud, which lay in the western Asia Minor. The Lydians were famed in the Old World for the skill of their archers. They spoke an Indo-European language, some examples of which are in the form of certain items of graffiti that currently deface certain Egyptian monuments. The land of Lydia, however, was finally conquered by Cyrus, king of Persia, in the year 546 BC. See map 4. 53. Aram. He was the founder of the Armenians, known to the Akkadians as the Aramu, but who were later known to the Greeks as Syrians, from Serug, c. 76. In an Assyrian inscription of Tiglath-Pileser I, 1100 BC, the Arameans are described as living to the east of the river Tigris. By the time of Tiglath-Pileser III, however, that is some 400 years later, they are living all over Mesopotamia, after which, of course, they settled to the west, occupying roughly the same area that makes up modern Syria. A clay tablet from Ur bears the name of Aramu, and it is of interest to note that Aramaic is still spoken today. See figure 9, see map 2. Number 54, Uz. There is considerable disagreement as to the precise area in which the descendants of Uz settled, and given the somewhat mobile nature of the Armenians, Aram was the father of Uz, c. 53. This is hardly surprising. Northern Arabia, between Babylonia and Edom, seems the most likely area of settlement. See map 2. 55. Hull. His descendants settled north of the Sea of Galilee, where they gave their name to the lake and vale of Hule, the biblical waters of Merom. The place was notorious amongst Victorian explorers of Palestine for its tribes of Bedouin robbers and its far from healthy marshes and swamps, which today have been drained, the reclaimed land being farmed and settled. The modern Israelis have also set up a nature reserve there and know the place as the Vale of Hula. The Lake of Hula is formed by the accumulation of water from the two sources of the Jordan before beginning their descent to Galilee. See map 4. 56. Gether. His descendants settled to the south of Damascus. Josephus identifies them as the latter-day Bactrians, famous amongst other things for a breed of camel. Whether this identification is correct or not cannot now be determined. It should, however, be noted that Bactria was populated by Aryan, that is, Japhetic tribes in the late Assyrian times, whereas the children of Gether were, of course, Semites. But see Shem 48, see map 4. 57. Meshech. His descendants are not to be confused with those of the Japhetic Meshech, c. 14, who were Indo-Europeans. The name of this Semitic line of Meshech was also known as Mash, the area of whose settlement can be deduced from the fact that the Akkadians rendered the name as Mashu, which in turn was known to the Egyptians as Mashir. Both of these names refer to peoples who dwelt in Lebanon. See map 4. '58. Shelah. His name has not yet been found in secular sources. 59. Eber. He gave his name to the Hebrew race. Some scholars have tried to identify him as Eber, erstwhile king of Ebla, a theory that is not only impossible to substantiate, but is also unlikely on both chronological and ethnic grounds. The attempt to identify the Habiru of the Egyptian chronicles with the Hebrews may also be somewhat forced, although it is fair to add that, although we today tend to think only of the Jewish nation as Hebrews, in fact, all of Eber's descendants would technically have been Hebrew also, the Joktanite tribes of Arabs included, but more and better evidence is needed before the matter can be finally settled. Number 60, Joktan. The progenitor of no less than 13 southern Arabian tribes, he is remembered by modern Arabs as Joktan. Only the purest Arabs, it is still maintained, are those Semitic Arabs descended from Joktan, whilst Hamitic Arabs are referred to somewhat disdainfully as Rabs, that is, pretend Arabs, see Shem 48. Joktan's name is preserved in the ancient town of Joktan, near present-day Mecca, see map 2. 61. Almodad. Young gives Almodad's name as meaning the agitator, which, if correct, hides what is no doubt a most interesting background. The name is certainly Arabic. His descendants are known to early Arab historians as the Almorad tribe, although their precise area of settlement cannot be determined. Number 62, Shelef. A southern Arabian tribe who were known to pre-Islamic Arabs as the Salaf. They were a Yemeni tribe whose capital, Sulaf, lay some 60 miles due north of present-day Sana'a. See 66, see map 2. 63. Hazarmaveth. His descendants populated the 200-mile-long valley that runs parallel to the southern coast of Arabia. It is known to this day as the Hadramot, a direct transposition into Arabic of the name Hazarmaveth. In pre-Islamic inscriptions, the name is variously rendered Hidermit and Hidrwit. Strabo tells us that the tribe of Hazarmaveth was one of the four main tribes of the Arabs in his day. The name means town of death. Hadramot means the same thing in Arabic, the history of which, could we but discover it, would doubtless render a fascinating, though tragic, account. See map 2. 64. Jerah. There lies on the shores of Galilee a ruined mound that is named Beth Yerah. That is the house of Jerah, although it is unlikely that this refers to the subject here. It is rather far more likely that his descendants migrated into the southern regions of Arabia. Indeed, the Arab city that bore Jerah's name, and which was rendered by Ptolemy as Jeracom, lay on the Mara coast close to the Hadramot. See 63, see map 2. Hadoram, 65, a southern Arabian tribe which is seemingly unattested in secular records, see map 2. 66, Uzal. Arab historians render the name of Uzal as Azal, and this is the ancient pre-Islamic name of the cities of Sana'a, the modern capital of the Yemen. Uzal's descendants are still doubtless thriving in the area. The Assyrians knew the tribe of Uzal as the Azala, see map 2. 67. Dikla. The Akkadians rendered this name as Diklat. The Armenians gave it as Diklath, and the Assyrians knew it as Adiklat, all of which was transposed into Greek as Tigris, which may prove to be an important clue as to the area in which this people settled. That is to the north of the Persian Gulf, or at least in the northeast extremity of the Arabian Peninsula. See map 2. 68. Obal. Southern Arabian tribe whose name was rendered by Arab historians as Ebal. Ancient inscriptions from the Yemen render it as Abel, which is elsewhere given as Ubal. According to these sources, the location of this tribe's place of settlement lies between the ancient Yemeni cities of Haidaida and Sana'a, see Uzal 66, see map 2. 69. Abimael. His descendants settled in southern Arabia, where their existence is known from ancient Sabaean inscriptions, see map 2. 70. Sheba. Yet a third man named Sheba, c. 48, 22, and 95, due to the presence in Arabia of both the Cushite and Joktanite tribes of Sheba. Neither this individual nor his descendants are discernible in the records. 71. Ophir. Their existence being duly noted in the pre-Islamic Arabian inscriptions. This tribe's area of settlement is given by them as laying between Saba in the Yemen and Havilan or Havilah, c. 72. The name seems to have been preserved in the coastal town of Ma'afir in southwest Arabia, see map 2. 72. Havilah. There were two Arabian tribes that were known under the name of Havilah. The first was of Hamitic descent and is noted as 19 in the genealogy. The Hamitic tribe settled in the eastern regions of the Arabian Peninsula. Their land was known to the Arabian cosmographers as Hawlan. Koch renders the name as Hawala, as a people who dwelt on the Arabian shores of the Persian Gulf. The Semitic tribe of Havilah, however, remained distinct and occupied areas on the opposite side of the peninsula. In Strabo's day, they were still occupying areas of northern Arabia, their name being recorded by him as the Quality. Josephus knew them as the Eolat. The Arabian cosmographer Yakut informs us that the dialect Hawil was spoken by the descendants of Midian, the son of Abraham, c. 87. This Semitic tribe of Havilah also occupied the southernmost tip of Arabia, crossing the Bab el-Mandeb to the African coast. Here both Ptolemy and Pliny refer to their city of Ualis on the Red Sea coast of Africa, which lay next to the modern state of Djibouti. This same city, Ualis, is today known as Zila, see map 2. Number 73, Jobab. Jobab's descendants were known to the Akkadians as the Ayabibi. They settled in the town that bore the founder's name, Juabibab, which according to Sabian inscriptions lay close to what is now Mecca, see map 2. 74, Peleg. In his day, the earth was divided. The meaning of his name, that is division, is as rendered in Hebrew, is confirmed by the Akkadian noun Peluku, which means a dividing up of territory by means of borders and boundaries. The Akkadian verb meaning to divide at the borders is Palaku. Likewise, the Assyrian Palgu refers to the dividing up of a land by canals and irrigation systems. It is in this sense that the Hebrew word Peleg is used in, for example, Job 29:6 and Job 38:5. The man named Peleg, however, was so named after the division and scattering of the nations at Babel. In fact, one of the ancient names of Babel, is nowadays translated as a place of canals, Palgu, whereas a better translation would obviously be the place of division. There is, however, an ancient city that bore his name. That was known to the Akkadians as Falgu, whose ruins lie at the junction of the Euphrates and the Chebar, see Ezekiel 1:1, rivers. We see in the genealogy that the scattering of the nations from Babel thus occurred in the 5th generation after the flood, see map 2. 75. Ru. This name appears as a personal name in Akkadian documents, where it is rendered Ra'u. The early Greeks knew it as Ragau. Ru was to give his name to an island in the Euphrates that lies just below the city of Anat, and which the Akkadians knew as Ra-Ilu. It was also known to the Greeks as Ragu. See map 2. Number 76. Serug. He gave his name to the city and district that was known to the Akkadians as Sarugi. This lay to the west of Haran, c. 79. It is usually taught that the Greeks gave Syria its name after confusing the name of Assyria. It is, however, more likely that the name of Syria is a corruption of Serug's name, see map 2. Number 77. Nahor. There seems to be no secular record concerning him, but see 83. We'll have a quick look at this image illustration of figure 10. After a stone statuette depicting an Ammonite king dated 800 BC. The chief god of the Ammonites, the worship of which made them notorious in the ancient world, was Moloch. For details of such worship, see my article, The Historic Jonah, Ex Nihilo Technical Journal. Well, guys, Moloch was worshipped in Scotland as well. So we're on to number 78, Terah. Father of Abraham, he later settled in Haran, C79, where he died. The name Terah is associated in Jewish literature with the moon god, and some thus think that there exists a direct etymological link between his name and the teraphim, that is, small idolatrous images that were kept in most households. When we consider the subsequent history of Terah and his line, excluding that of Abraham through Isaac, then this is not at all unlikely. Indeed, Joshua 24:2 describes Terah as an idolater. However, near to the city of Haran, there was a place that bore Terah's name, known to the Syrians as Turahi, and to the Akkadians as Turahu. See map 2. Number 79. Haran. Haran was the youngest of his father's sons. He was born at Ur, and he died there at a young age. To his father, Terah, C78, is attributed the founding of the city of Haran, Terah meaning the place in his son's memory and honor. The city lay on the main highway to Nineveh from Carchemish, and it is interesting to note that the Assyrian noun for the main road was Haranu. From its earliest days, the city was one of the chief centers of moon worship, and we frequently read of its temple being restored and embellished by successive kings of Assyria. Its temple was, indeed, every bit as famous and well subscribed as that at Ur, where the family originated. Nimrod was also worshipped here, C25, he being referred to in the inscriptions concerning him as the prince of the men of Haran, see map 2. 80. Lot. Secular history is silent concerning him, save for the fact that the Dead Sea has always been called by the Arabs the Sea of Lot. 81. Moab. He was, of course, the founder of the nation of Moab. This nation was also known as Mu-Abu to the Akkadians and as M.B. to the Egyptians. See map 4. 82. Benami. He founded the Ammonite nation, and his name still perpetuated in the modern city of Amman that lies south of lies some 25 miles to the northeast of the Dead Sea. Present-day Amman, in fact, was once the capital city of the Ammonite nation and was known in the Old World as Rabbath Ammon. We know from the first book of the Maccabees that Judas Maccabeus confronted the Ammonites, and hence that the Ammonites had survived as a distinct nation until at least the 2nd century BC. However, in the 1st century BC, their lands were occupied by the Nabateans, see Naboth 97, and it's here that the Ammonites, as such, disappear from their historical scene. The personal name of Benami is known from certain clan lists from Ugarit. There also survives from Nimrud, C25, an inscription bearing the name of Banu Amania. The Assyrians generally knew the Ammonite nation as Bit Ammanaya. That is the house of Ammon. See figure 10, see map 4. So here in figure 11, Arabs fleeing on a camel from the skirmish with the Assyrian soldiers from bas relief at Nineveh. These Arabs are riding a dromedary, a breed of camel for which the Medinite tribes were famous. Must have been a big camel. Actually, that image reminds me of there's a crusader symbol, and it's like two crusaders on the same horse. And this kind of reminds me that same symbology. So we're on to 83. Nahor. The name Nahor is known from Babylonian inscriptions and from the clay tablets of Mari, which render the name as Nahur. Nahor, in fact, settled in Haran, c. 79, which was later to become known as the town of Nahor. This appears in inscriptions from the reign of Ashur-banipal as Nahuru, and the city's ruins were known to the Assyrians as Tel Nahiri, that is the mound of Nahor, see map 2. Number 84, Abraham, the well-known founder of the Jewish people. There exists from Babylonia an early clay tablet that bears the name of a man called Abiramu, and the name is rendered as Abarama in the Ebelite tablets. Another bears the name of Sarai, but whether these were the Abram and Sarai of the Genesis record or not, we have no way of knowing. Josephus quotes the Babylonian historian Berosus as saying, in the 10th generation after the flood, there was a man among the Chaldeans who was righteous and great. Josephus rightly, in my opinion, regarded this remark as a direct reference to Abraham, even though Berosus did not actually name him. Abraham was, however, named by Hecataeus and by Nicholas of Damascus. Shua, number 85. The founder of the Shuites, one of whose descendants Bildad counseled Job. The Assyrians knew Shua's posterity as the Suhu and described the land as lying adjacent to the Euphrates, south of Carchemish, between the Balak and Kaber rivers. The Kaber River was recorded as the Kaboras by Ptolemy, see Peleg 74, and as Kebar by Ezekiel, see map 2. Number 86, Ishbak. He was a progenitor of a tribe who seemed to have settled to the east of Canaan. Otherwise, secular records seem to be silent concerning them. See map 2. 87, Midian. The founder of the Midianite tribes of Arabs. The Arabian historian Yaqut tells us that they spoke the Hawil dialect of Arabic, c. 72, and he also confirms the fact that Midian was the son of Abraham. The tribes of Midian are also known from Egyptian and other sources. Ptolemy, for example, recording the name as Modiana, whilst the ancient pre-Islamic Arab city of Madian is today known as Magair Shu Aib, see figure 11, see map 2. Number 88, Ephah. Ephah's descendants settled in what is now Guwafa, to the southwest of Tebuk in the northwest Arabian Peninsula. They are known to us in the annals of the Tiglath-Pileser III, who refers to them as the Hayapa. Subsequently, they are last heard of in an inscription of Sargon II that dates to the year 750 BC. 715 BC, see map 2. 89. Ephor. Ashur-banipal of Assyria recorded the name of Ephar's descendants as the Aparu. The city in which they settled still bears the name of their founder, Gifar. It lies close to Medina. See map 2. Excuse that thing. Number 90, Henoch. He founded the famous Kenite tribe of Midianite Arabs. They were renowned coppersmiths who settled to the southwest of the Gulf of Aqaba. See map 2. Number 91, Abadah. Manian inscriptions from Yemen record the name of Abadah's posterity as the Abiyadi. The precise area of settlement is unknown, however, although it must have been in the southeastern regions of the Arabian Peninsula. Map 2. 92. Eldah. Descendants of Eldah are known to us from the ancient Sabaean inscriptions, which refer to them as a Yada Il. We do not know their precise area of settlement, although it's certainly within the Yemen. See map 2. 93. Medan. He founded various northern Arabian tribes, and his name is still preserved in the modern and famous Arab family name of Abd al-Madan. His posterity settled in the town of Madan, and this is mentioned in an inscription of Tiglath-Pileser III, that date to the year 732 BC. He renders the name as Badan, but the letters M and B are interchangeable in Arabic. The town lay to the south of Tema, C109, see map 2. Joktan, seemingly unknown outside the biblical records, he appears to have settled with his descendants in northern Arabia, see map 2. 95. Sheba. Descendants of this Sheba made up the Semitic Arabs who were to supersede the earlier Hamitic tribe who founded the original nation of Sheba. Here we note again the direct derivation of the Hebrew word Arab, from Arab, mixed multitudes, see map 2. 96. Dedan. Again, the descendants of this Dedan made up the tribes of Semitic Dedanite Arabs who were to supersede the early Hamitic tribes of Dedan. The city of Dedan, modern Dedan, is mentioned in the inscriptions of Nabonidus, king of Babylon, who spent his years of exile at Tema, C109, see map 2. 97. The sons of Dedan. The sons of Dedan, who founded three tribes of Semitic Dedanite Arabs, of whom nothing further is learnt from secular sources, save only for the fact that in later Jewish literature, the Asshurim, not to be confused with Assyrians, were described as travelling merchants. The Letushim were those who sharpened weapons, and the Lumimim were somewhat enigmatically described as the chiefs of those who inhabit the isles, the significance of which phrase is now lost to us. From this information, it would appear that the Asshurim and Letushim would travel the countryside, selling and repairing various items, rather like the numerous tribes of gypsies and tinkers that were once a common feature of the English and European scenes. Number 98. Zimran, the chieftain and founder of an Arab tribe whose chief city lay to the west of Mecca. Ptolemy recorded its name as Zabram, the letters M and B being interchangeable in Arabic. See map 2. 99. Isaac. Although he is well enough known in the biblical records, secular historians and sources seem to be silent concerning him. 100. Ishmael. Among the Babylonian documents that have come down to us from the days of Hammurabi, there is a list of witnesses to certain documents. One of these witnesses is registered as Abuha, son of Ishmael. 101. Nebaioth. He settled with his descendants to the south of the Dead Sea, where they were known to the Chaldeans, C51, as the Nabat, and to the Assyrians as the Nabiite. Their own inscriptions render the name as Niptwa. The Greek historians Diodorus mentions them, and they were known to Ptolemy as the Nabatai. The Nabateans' final demise was brought about by Augustus Caesar, who cut off the trade routes of Arabia. By the time of Tiberius Caesar, all the land east of Judea was collectively known as Nabatea. 102. Kedar. Known to the Hebrews as the Kedar and the Assyrians as the Kidri, his descendants became the great tribes of Arabs who settled in the northwest Arabian Peninsula and whose black tents were to become proverbial in the ancient world. We are informed in Babylonian sources that the armies of Nebuchadnezzar confronted the tribe of Kedar in a major skirmish of the year 599 BC, an incident that was foretold by Jeremiah 49, 28, and 29. The tribe of Kedar is also mentioned in the annals of Ashurbanipal, with whom they clashed, and in various other Assyrian documents. In these, the men of Kedar are mentioned in close association with those of Nebaioth, C101. The founder of Islam, Muhammad, was to trace his own direct descent from Kedar, see map 2. 103. Adbil. He was the founder of a tribe who was known to the Akkadians as the Idibelu. This same people are subsequently mentioned in the annals of Tiglath-Pileser III, who tells us how he conquered the Idibelians and employed them to guard the approaches to Egypt's borders. Their area of settlement was in the northwest Arabia, close to the lands of Kedar, see 102, and Nebaioth, see 101, see map 2. 104, Mibzam, an otherwise unknown Bedouin chieftain. 105, Mishma, he settled with his descendants in what is now known today as Jebel Mishma, in the vicinity of Tema, see 109, see map 2. 106, Duma. The Assyrians and Babylonians knew Duma's descendants as the Adamatu. Nabonidus later tells us how he conquered the Adamu. Ptolemy referred to them as the Damatha, and Porphyry recorded their name as the Dumathai. We know them as the Udumeans. The name of Duma is still preserved in the modern Arab city of Dumat al-Jandal, the ancient capital of his tribe, see map 2. 107, Massa. The descendants of Massa were known to the Assyrians as the Massa, who, with the tribe of Tema, see 109, were forced to pay tribute to Tiglath-Pileser III. He tells us how he conquered them along with the peoples of Hayapa, see Epha 88. The Idibalians, see 103, and others. Ptolemy knew the tribe as Massanoi, who lived to the northeast of Duma, see 106. Josephus records their name as the Massanians, and that in his day their lands were known to the Romans as Charax Spasini, see map 2. 108, Hadad. This name is rendered as Hadu in the Akkadian inscriptions, and it was the name of a pagan god. Hadad himself, however, is unknown from secular sources. 109, Tema. Still known by today's Arabs as Tema, the city of Tema's descendants lies some 70 miles northeast of Dedan, c. 23 and 96. Nabonidus, king of Babylon from 556 to 539 BC, passed his years of exile in this city, which he also knew as Tema. The city of Tema, with those of Dedan and Duma, c. 106, formed stages in the caravan route from Babylon down to Sheba, c. 22 and 95, see map 2. 110, Jetur. He was a progenitor of the Eturians, who were known to the Greeks as the Turai. The Turians are mentioned in the works of Dio Cassius, Josephus, Pliny, Strabo, and others, and they were known to the Roman authorities as a notorious tribe of robbers. The descendants of Jetur perpetrated a massacre of Lebanese Christians in the year 1860 AD. See map 4. Naphish. He and his lineage are variously known in the biblical records as Nephish and his children of Nephuzim and the Nephishesim. They are seemingly unknown from secular sources. And finally, 112, Kedemah. He and his descendants settled in what was later known as the wilderness of Kedemoth. The tribe dwelt in the city that is known today as Ezapheran, see map 4. So some footnotes. We'll just finish on a few footnotes. Sometimes, of course, the memory of the creation and so on was not so distorted. On deciphering the fragments of certain clay tablets, George Smith writes, fragment of the obverse, broken as it is precious as giving the description of the chaos or desolate void before the creation of the world in the first movement of creation. This corresponds to the first 2 verses of the first chapter of Genesis. Our next fragments refer to the creation of mankind, called Adam, as in the Bible. He is made perfect and instructed in his religious duties, but afterwards he joins with the dragon of the deep. the spirit of chaos, and offends against his God. Chaldean Genesis, pages 64 and 304. See bibliography. See Genesis 4:22. The Germanic and Nordic races worshipped him as Thor. Unger, pages 174 and 175. See bibliography. It can be proved that the idolatry of the whole earth is one, that all the paganisms of the human race are only a wicked and deliberate, yet most instructive corruption of the primeval gospel first preached in Eden and through Noah afterwards conveyed to all mankind. But yet, amid all this seeming variety of heathenism, there is an astonishing oneness and identity bearing testimony to the truth of God's word. The Two Babylons, page 224. See bibliography. The early Irish Celts traced their own descents from the Scythian lineage of Magog. Shortly before the year 432 AD, their various pedigrees and genealogies were collected together by the pre-Christian scholars of Ireland. See part 2 of this article. So we're going to be looking at part 2 of this article. This is only part 1, guys, where we go through all the lineages. There's a whole new part about how the Irish and the Scots think they descend from these Scythians. As the Milesians were the last of the colonists, only their genealogies, with a few exceptions, have been preserved. The genealogical tree begins, therefore, with the brothers Eber and Aram, the two surviving leaders of the expedition, whose ancestors are traced back to Magog, the son of Japhet. There are also other families claiming descent from Emer, the son of brother to Eber and Aram, as far from their cousin Lugade, the son of Ith. From these four sources, the principal Celtic families of Ireland have sprung. Dushak, M.F. 1868, The Illustrated History of Ireland, page 84, facsimile edition by Bracken Books, 1987, London. Throughout history, it can be shown that either the posterity or the downfall of various nations is directly related to their attitude to and treatment of the Jewish people, the children of Abraham. Indeed, so consistent is the rule that has surely attained the status of a universal law of history, a law which had its beginnings in the promise of God to Abraham that is recorded in Genesis 12:3. Those nations that have helped the Jews and befriended them have prospered accordingly. Those that sought their destruction have always themselves been destroyed. This much is demonstrable and is invariable in its application, even when such nations as Assyria were used to punish the Jewish nation. This is the bibliography. I'll just let you guys have a look at that. Right, people, that's the end of the first part. That was part 1 of the early history of man. There's a whole second part to this, and we're going to look at how the Celtic tribes connect to these people. Anyway, people, thanks for listening, and I'll see you in my next video. Cheers.